Nobody expected it to happen like this. For years, the world of hypercars felt stable, almost untouchable, as if the same names would always stay at the top. Bugatti, Ferrari, McLaren. These were not just car companies. They were symbols of perfection, locked behind millions of dollars, secret factories, and engineering that most people could only dream about. But then something strange started happening in the background. Something that at first looked small, almost unimportant, but slowly began to shake the entire industry from the inside. A new force was rising, and it did not look like the old supercar world at all. It came from a place many traditional car fans underestimated: China. A company called BYD, once known mainly for building affordable electric cars, started moving in a direction nobody fully understood at first. They were no longer just competing in the normal car market. They were stepping into a space reserved for the absolute elite. Hypercars that could challenge the fastest machines on Earth. At first, many people ignored it. The idea that a company known for practical electric vehicles could even approach names like Bugatti or Ferrari seemed unrealistic. These brands had decades, even generations of history, racing DNA and prestige. But what if history no longer mattered as much as technology? What if the rules of the game had quietly changed while everyone was still watching the old champions? That is exactly what started to happen when new electric hypercars began appearing with shocking performance numbers, breaking records that once seemed untouchable. And the most surprising part was not just how fast these machines were, but how quickly they were evolving. It felt like every new model was rewriting what was physically possible. Then came the rumors, and this is where things became even more intense. People began talking about a challenge that sounded almost unbelievable: a damaged hypercar, worth millions of dollars, not being hidden away in a factory for secret repair, but instead being handed over to a public creator on the internet, a man known for doing the impossible in his own garage. That man is Mat Armstrong, a YouTuber who built his reputation by taking crashed, broken, and almost destroyed supercars and rebuilding them step by step, while millions of people watched every detail. His workshop is not a high-tech factory filled with robotic systems. It is a real garage full of tools, cameras, noise, mistakes, and problem-solving done in real time. And that is exactly what makes this idea so powerful and so controversial at the same time. Because if a hypercar worth $2 million is really placed in that environment, something very uncomfortable begins to surface for the entire automotive industry. These machines are designed to be controlled, protected, and repaired only inside factory systems where every part is approved, every tool is certified, and every step is monitored. But a public rebuild destroys that privacy. It exposes everything: the hidden costs, the complex systems, the locked software, and it depends on manufacturers for even the smallest repair. It turns a symbol of perfection into a real mechanical object that can be taken apart and rebuilt by someone outside the system. And that is where the real tension begins. Because this is no longer just about fixing a damaged car. It becomes a question of power. Who actually owns the technology once a hypercar leaves the showroom? Is it the company that built it or the person who bought it? And what happens when a new generation companies, especially electric innovators like BYD, start operating with a completely different mindset? One that is less about secrecy and more about performance, speed, and public proof. At this point, the story stops being about cars alone. It becomes something bigger, something closer to a battle between old control and new freedom. And the most interesting part is that this battle is not happening in boardrooms or racing circuits. It is happening in garages, on YouTube screens, and in the minds of millions of viewers who are beginning to question how much control manufacturers should really have over the machines they sell. For a long time, hypercars are defined by a very simple idea: Europe leads, the rest follows. Brands like Bugatti built their reputation on extreme speed, massive engineering budgets, and machines that felt almost impossible to challenge. At the same time, Ferrari continued to dominate the world of performance and racing heritage, where every car carried decades of Formula One influence and emotional design. But this balance began to shift when new electric technology started removing old limitations. Suddenly, speed was no longer tied only to engines, fuel, or traditional aerodynamics. It was tied to software, batteries, and electric motors that could be scaled in ways combustion engines never could. This is where BYD entered the most unexpected part of the story. Originally known for practical electric vehicles and buses, the company began investing heavily in high-performance technology. At first, it seemed like a side project, something designed to show technical capability rather than compete with the world's fastest cars. But over time, that changed completely. The company's luxury sub-brand, Yangwang, started building machines that were no longer just fast for an electric car, but fast compared to the entire history of hypercars. The shift was quiet, but the impact was massive. Then came the moment that shocked the automotive world. A new electric hypercar, known as a U9 Extreme, began appearing in discussions not as a concept, but as a production-level machine capable of record-breaking performance. Reports and demonstrations suggested numbers that sounded almost unreal. Extreme horsepower levels, advanced quad motor systems, and acceleration that pushed beyond what many traditional hypercars could achieve. In a world where Bugatti once defined top speed as the ultimate benchmark, suddenly a new competitor was talking about matching or even exceeding those numbers using electric power alone. This was not just an upgrade in technology. It felt like a direct challenge to the entire philosophy of what a hypercar should be. What made this even more intense was not just the performance, but the confidence behind it. BYD was no longer behaving like a newcomer trying to prove itself. It was behaving like a company ready to enter the top tier and stay there. Limited production numbers, ultra-premium pricing, and aggressive performance claims created a clear message. This was not about making affordable cars anymore. It was about entering a space that had been protected for decades by European engineering giants. And for the first time, those giants were not the only ones setting the rules. Inside the industry, this created a quiet but serious reaction. Engineers, journalists, and enthusiasts began asking a simple question: how real is this shift? Because on paper, electric powertrains can scale performance faster than traditional engines. With enough motors and battery capacity, extreme acceleration and top speed become engineering problems, not mechanical limitations. But hypercars are not just about numbers. They are about control, reliability, emotional driving experience, and long-term durability under extreme conditions. This is where companies like Bugatti and Ferrari still hold strong arguments. Their machines are not just fast in a straight line. They are built with decades of refinement, racing data, and mechanical emotion that electric systems are still trying to match. However, the real shock was not just the technology itself, but the direction it suggested for the future. If companies like BYD can produce machines that rival or surpass traditional hypercars, then the entire hierarchy of the automotive world starts to feel unstable. The idea that only a few brands can define the fastest car in the world begins to disappear. Instead, performance becomes something more open, more competitive, and more unpredictable. And that is where the story becomes even more interesting, because speed alone is not the only battlefield. There's another layer beneath it, one that is less visible but even more important: control over repair, ownership, and access. Because building a fast car is one thing, but deciding what happens when that car breaks is a completely different level of power. And this is where the next part of the story begins to connect hypercars, YouTubers, and the hidden structure behind the automotive industry. While the world of hypercars was getting faster, louder, and more competitive, another completely different kind of disruption was happening in a much smaller place. It was not in a factory in Italy, Germany, or China. It was not on a racetrack or a motor show stage. It was in a simple workshop in the UK, where damaged cars were being brought back from the edge of destruction in front of the camera. At the center of this movement was Mat Armstrong, a man who turned broken supercars into public storytelling events watched by millions. What made his work so different was not just the cars he rebuilt, but how openly he did it. In traditional automotive repair systems, especially for high-end machines like those made by Ferrari or Bugatti, repair work is controlled, private, and highly restricted. Only approved workshops are allowed to access certain systems, diagnostic tools, and replacement parts. Even small repairs can require factory authorization. The idea is simple: protect performance, protect safety, and protect brand value. But in reality, it also creates a system where the average owner has very little control once something goes wrong. Mat Armstrong's approach breaks that system open. When a crashed supercar arrives at his workshop, it does not go behind closed doors. Instead, it becomes a public journey. Every damaged panel, every failed component, every wiring issue, and every unexpected problem is shown step by step. This transparency is exactly what makes his content so powerful. Viewers do not just see a finished result. They see the struggle behind it. They see how complicated modern cars really are. And they also see something that manufacturers usually try to hide, that even the most expensive machines in the world can be rebuilt outside of official systems. This is where the tension begins to grow. Because as Mat's audience expanded, so did the visibility of a very uncomfortable truth for the automotive industry. Modern supercars are not just mechanical machines anymore. They are digital systems filled with locked software, encrypted control units, and proprietary diagnostics. In many cases, even replacing a simple component can require factory approval or specialized tools. This means that once a car is damaged, the manufacturer does not just control its design, they also control its recovery, and that control extends far beyond safety. It also affects cost, accessibility, and even whether a vehicle is considered reparable at all. Mat Armstrong challenges this idea simply by existing. When he rebuilds a crashed Lamborghini, McLaren, or Rolls-Royce, he proves that many of these systems can be understood, reverse-engineered, or sourced through alternative supply chains. He shows that not everything is as locked as manufacturers present it to be. And when millions of viewers watch these rebuilds, it changes perception. A supercar is no longer just a fragile, untouchable object. It becomes something that can be taken apart, studied, and brought back to life in a normal workshop. This is also why his work creates subtle discomfort within the industry. It is not that manufacturers openly oppose repair culture. Instead, the problem is what public repair represents. If a YouTuber can rebuild a crashed multi-million-dollar vehicle and show it step by step, it raises a difficult question. Why is factory restriction necessary in the first place? Is it truly about safety, or is it also about control over parts, service revenue, and long-term ownership? As this debate grows, another layer begins to connect with the story, because it is not just about one creator or one type of car. It is about the entire structure of the automotive world, where ownership ends at the showroom, but control continues long after. And in this system, every major brand, from Ferrari to Bugatti, has built its own balance between exclusivity and restriction. Some protect it quietly, some aggressively, but all of them rely on it in one way or another. And this is where the story takes an even bigger turn. Because when you combine rising electric hypercar power from companies like BYD with the growing influence of public rebuild culture, you start to see a future where control over cars may no longer stay in the hands of manufacturers alone. Instead, it begins to shift toward creators, communities, and independent engineers who are not afraid to challenge the rules that once seemed permanent. There's a point in every industry where small changes stop being small. In the hypercar world, that moment came when a damaged machine from one of the most protected brands in the world became the center of a public rebuilding battle. The car in question was a Bugatti Chiron, a symbol of extreme engineering and exclusivity built by Bugatti, a company known for treating every vehicle as a masterpiece that should only be repaired under factory supervision. In normal circumstances, a severely damaged Chiron would never leave the official system. It would be shipped back to the factory, analyzed by specialists, and rebuilt using internal tools, software, and procedures that are not available anywhere else. But this time, things did not follow the normal path. A crashed hypercar entered the world of public rebuilding, connected to Mat Armstrong, a creator already known for taking extremely complex vehicles and rebuilding them in full view of millions of viewers. This was not just another project. This was a direct collision between two different philosophies: the factory-controlled world of hypercars and the open, transparent world of online repair culture. The moment the rebuild began, problems appeared almost immediately, and they were not just mechanical. The biggest issue was control. Modern hypercars like the Chiron are not only built from carbon fiber and advanced engines, they're also deeply integrated with digital systems that rely on factory authorization. One of the most important systems is the VIN-based access structure. When a vehicle is heavily damaged, manufacturers can restrict or lock certain functions tied to the vehicle identification number. Without full access, it becomes extremely difficult to order official parts, run diagnostics, or reprogram critical systems. This is not just a technical limitation. It is a gatekeeping system that defines who is allowed to repair the car and who is not. This is where the conflict became public. On one side, the manufacturer's philosophy was clear. A hypercar like this is so advanced that only factory-trained experts can guarantee safety and structural integrity. From their perspective, allowing independent rebuilds could risk performance, reliability, and even human safety. On the other side, Mat's approach showed something very different. Through careful inspection, scanning technology, and alternative sourcing methods, many components of even the most complex cars could still be repaired or recreated outside the factory system. What was once considered impossible slowly started to look achievable, step by step, in a normal workshop environment. As the rebuild progressed, another surprising truth began to emerge. Even in hypercars worth millions, not every component is unique. Some safety systems, sensors, and electronic parts are shared across different vehicles and manufacturers. This means that the hypercar world is not as isolated as it appears. Beneath the luxury branding and exclusivity, there is still a hidden layer of shared automotive engineering. Discovering and using these overlaps became one of the key strategies in continuing to rebuild without full factory support. But the deeper the project went, the more it became clear that this was no longer just about fixing a damaged vehicle. It had turned into a symbolic challenge to the entire system of controlled repair. Every step of the rebuild raised a bigger question. If a hypercar can be restored outside the official network, then how much control does the manufacturer truly have after sale? And if that control can be bypassed, even partially, what does that mean for the future of ownership? This is where the tension reached a new level. Because manufacturers are not only responsible for building cars, they also maintain long-term ecosystems around them. These ecosystems include service networks, software access, diagnostics, and certified repair processes. They are designed to ensure consistency and protect brand value. But from the outside, they can also look like barriers that limit freedom and increase dependency on the original company. In the middle of this conflict, the Chiron rebuild became more than just a repair project. It became a live demonstration of two competing futures. One future is tightly controlled, where only factories decide how complex machines are repaired. The other is more open, where skilled independent builders, creators, and engineers can take on even the most advanced machines and bring them back to life in public view. And as this battle unfolded, it began to influence not only enthusiasts and viewers, but also the way people think about hypercar ownership itself. Because once you see a multi-million-dollar machine being rebuilt outside the system, it becomes difficult to believe that the system is the only option. As the debate around independent car rebuilding grew louder, the conversation started shifting away from just one hypercar project and expanded into something much bigger: the entire idea of ownership in the modern automotive world. For decades, companies like Ferrari have built not only cars, but also a complete ecosystem around them. This ecosystem is designed to keep the brand experience consistent, controlled, and highly exclusive. When someone buys a Ferrari, they are not just buying speed or design. They are entering a structured system of servicing, maintenance, software updates, and approved repair networks. Every detail, from engine calibration to replacement parts, is carefully managed through factory-authorized channels. On one hand, this system has clear benefits. It ensures that every vehicle leaving the factory remains as close as possible to its original performance standard. It also protects safety, which is extremely important when dealing with machines that can reach extreme speeds. Ferrari often argues that this level of control preserves the identity and value of the car. From their perspective, a Ferrari is not just a product. It is a long-term engineering commitment that requires professional oversight at every stage of its life. However, this level of control also creates tension, especially when owners want more freedom. Modern supercars are increasingly complex, filled with electronic systems that are locked, encrypted, and tied to factory tools. This means that even basic repairs can sometimes require official approval or specialized diagnostic equipment. For some owners and independent builders, this feels less like support and more like restriction. It raises a difficult question. When you buy a car, do you truly own it, or do you only own the right to use it under certain conditions? This debate is not new. One of the most well-known examples came from the public dispute involving the electronic music artist deadmau5 and his customized Ferrari 458. The car was heavily modified with unique branding and design changes that were not aligned with Ferrari's official image standards. The situation became widely discussed because it showed how seriously the company protects its brand identity. From Ferrari's perspective, modifications that significantly change the appearance of their cars can damage the exclusivity and reputation they have built over decades. From the owner's perspective, it raised concerns about personal freedom and how much control a manufacturer should have after a vehicle is sold. This type of conflict highlights a deeper truth about the luxury automotive world. Companies like Ferrari are not only selling performance, they are also selling identity, heritage, and emotional value. Every car represents the brand's history, racing success, and design philosophy. Because of this, they carefully manage how their vehicles are repaired, modified, and presented to the world. The goal is not just to protect the product, but to protect the meaning behind the product. But as independent rebuilders like Mat Armstrong continue to show their work publicly, this controlled environment begins to feel less absolute. When viewers see damaged supercars being restored outside official systems, it changes how they think about ownership. A crashed Ferrari, McLaren, or Lamborghini is no longer seen as a factory-only problem. It becomes a technical challenge that skilled individuals can attempt to solve with the right tools, knowledge, and creativity. This shift creates an uncomfortable contrast. On one side, manufacturers are building highly controlled ecosystems designed to maintain perfection and exclusivity. On the other side, independent creators are demonstrating that many of these systems can be understood, repaired, and even improved outside the factory environment. Neither side is entirely wrong. One focuses on safety, consistency, and brand protection. The other focuses on transparency, accessibility, and real-world problem-solving. As this gap widens, the question becomes more serious. If ownership is becoming more restricted through software locks, VIN control systems, and factory-only diagnostics, then the act of buying a hypercar is changing. It is no longer just about acquiring a machine. It is about entering a controlled environment where the manufacturer continues to influence how that machine lives, even years after purchase. And in the background of all this, new players like BYD are entering the scene with a completely different mindset. Their rise suggests that the future may not follow the traditional European model of strict control and exclusivity. Instead, it may move toward a more open system where performance, technology, and accessibility compete on equal terms. This is where the next stage of the story begins to form, a stage where hypercars are not only judged by speed, but also by how freely they can exist outside the factory walls.